And I'm going to share my screen.
So just to set the stage, Corepack is basically the new NPM. Is that?
So actually, let's talk about that.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's all right. No, it's good. So Corepack essentially is a script that's being included with Node.js now, so that you do not have to install third-party package managers in order to use those third-party package managers. So if you use PNPM or you use, more importantly, Yarn, you can use those without actually having to install those package managers globally on your system. And they have a way now with Corepack where if you are deploying your application to, let's say, a server, and maybe it's a test server and does not have access to the interwebs, and particularly to be able to pull down modules, you can also take and include the package manager inside of a TGZ file and deploy it, enable it on that server. So for instance, you're using something like Docker, for example, you can script all that stuff out so that you're able to run everything with that package manager without having to install the package manager. So
let me see. It produces a bundle kind of thing.
Sort of, and a lot of that's going to depend on which version of the package managers you're using, because like the version of Yarn that I typically use is version 1.22.11, but there's like a version 3.0 of Yarn which does not have a node_modules folder. It just packages everything up into it.
Why did you say Yarn more important to me than like Yarn is better?
I'm just speaking of it as so. For instance, like if you're a React developer, as an example, like Yarn is kind of like considered like the default package manager for Yarn. But if you're doing a lot of like front end stuff, PNPM is very popular with people that are doing a lot of front end stuff. So I'm thinking from my own perspective where I do more with React than I do with, other front end type stuff. So, anyways, let me turn this presentation on. If I can remember how to do that. Let's see here. This one right here. There we go. All right, that works. All right. So the topics we're going to be talking about tonight are going to be Node.js 16 LTS and Node 17. And then we're also going to be talking about Corepack and package managers.
Can I take this up?
Yeah.
Working on it?
Yeah. So just a quick about me. My name is David Fecky, and I have a YouTube channel called the Polyglot Engineer. And I also post a lot of stuff about JavaScript and software engineering on the JaxNode handle on Twitter, as well as the Polyglot Engine 1 on Twitter. And as we were talking about before, I'm always looking for people that want to present for the JaxNode user group. So if you're interested in doing that, or you're watching this video online, please give me a contact, and we'll get you set up to present at a upcoming meeting. So one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was the version of Node.js that's coming out right now. And let me actually go to the Node.js website. So if you go to the official Node.js website, one of the things you'll see is they always have like the latest version, and they have the LTS version. And if you look right here, you'll see that version 14.18.1 is the LTS version, and 17.0.1 is the current version. So up until a couple of days ago, version 16 was the current version, but they're at the point now with the long-term support schedule where they're going to go ahead and they're going to set up 16, so it's the LTS. So 16 will now be the LTS version of Node.js. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that, even though it's not officially the LTS version that you can download. You can actually download it and start using it, but it'll become the LTS starting next week. So because of that, I wanted to talk about some of the features that are coming out in Node 16. So let me go back to full screen mode here. So as you can see here from this LTS schedule, it basically works out so that there's an even and odd version of Node.js that comes out each year, and what they do is they will start working on the newest version of the new features and stuff they're going to be adding into the LTS version, but they start working on a year out from the release of that version. So they've been working on Node 15, Node 16 over the last year. Node 16 has gotten to the point where those features are mature enough to where they're going to release that as a long-term, that's what LTS means, it's a long-term support version of Node. And as you can see here that they still actively support and maintain, Node 12 and Node 14, but only up to a certain date here. So as you can see here, that if you're on a version earlier than 12, it may be time to upgrade. And most of the third party or the providers or hosting providers that you would use for Node, they usually wait till the LTS version comes out before they officially support that. So yeah, if you want to start using it, it'll roll over LTS next week. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what's coming in Node.js 17. So Node.js 17 so far has 3 new features. The biggest one is OpenSSL 3.0. So if you're familiar at all with TLS and all the secure handshaking and stuff that happens with HTTPS and stuff like that, that's handled by the OpenSSL library. And I think right now they're still on version 1.1 or some version like that. So this is a pretty major upgrade for OpenSSL that's coming out. And I don't know if people, I don't even remember this, like maybe about 5 years ago, there was a security bug that was found in an OpenSSL. I think it was like called Heartbleed or something like that. And yeah, and basically what they kind of figured out was that OpenSSL was not getting the love that it needed. And so it started getting a lot more attention and support from some of the larger companies and stuff like that. So OpenSSL is a much better supported project now than it was a half decade ago. They're also including V8 version 9.5 in Node.js 17. And they're also incorporating in a new readline promise API. So this is an example of what the new readline promise API looks like. So if you look at this, essentially what they're doing here is they're creating in and out parameters. And then they're using this promise API to create an interface. And then you can use that essentially as a way of hooking into the inputs and outputs for interacting with the command line. So in other words, you can read a line as a promise, and it'll handle this. So for people, I think that are writing like CLIs and stuff like that, this will be kind of a neat new feature. So as far as the Node 16 features, one of the big ones is ARM64 support for essentially for the people that are using the newer Apple hardware. Anybody here has the M1? Yeah. So a lot of stuff, like when the M1s were originally released, there's a lot of support through something that was called, what's it called? Maybe the project. They have Rosetta 2. So Rosetta 2, basically what it does is it takes Intel code and it kind of converts it on the fly to essentially ARM64 code. And it's very similar to another project that Apple had 15 years ago when they were switching from PowerPC to Intel, where they were translating stuff from PowerPC code to the Intel code. It would take an application that was written for the older architecture and then translate it on the fly so it would run on the new architecture. So they essentially have done the same thing, but obviously it's much better to have code that's written natively for that processor. And so they have now, since Node 16 was released, they have a build that you can use that is ARM64 based for the new Apple hardware. But now that it's LTS, it'll be an officially supported version. This also has a new version of the V8 engine. There's new regular expression functions that are also included with Node 16. There's also a new stable timer promises API. They also have a new web crypto API. And there's also some new Node API C methods that you can use as well if you're writing native modules. And they've also included the AbortController API as well. So AbortController, it's something I first started seeing. It was something that was supported in the browsers, but they didn't have support for it in Node particular. But what it does is it gives you a way of being able to have an easy way to take something that runs like in a synchronous function, let's say like a REST call or a file IO type call. And if you need to be able to, you want to be able to abort out of that before it's completed, this is a API that makes it a little bit easier to do that. So I have an example of that here coming up. And I also have support for version 3 of source maps. So V8 Node 9.5 is the latest version. 9 has support for these new regex functions with using the /d parameter. They also have faster JS to WASM calls. So if you're doing anything with WebAssembly, it's a big win. In order to use that, you have to use the experimental Turbo Inline JS WASM calls. This is an example of the stable timer promises. And if you want to use that, basically what you have to do is you have to import from the timers /promises. And so if you look at this function right here, essentially what this does is it lets you handle a timeout essentially using async and await logic. So if you look at this example here, I have a function called do something that I have prepended with the sync keyword, and then with the wait, I can basically set a timeout. And so if I go to execute this, what will happen is it will run the first line, then it will it'll wait for 2 seconds, and then it will say delayed timers. So kind of a neat feature. So the Web Crypto API was added essentially as a way of being able to be more compatible with the web version of crypto. There's actually a lot of different versions of crypto. What this allows us to do is now we can have a standard way or a single standard of being able to do web crypto between the browser and Node.js. So this is an example right here of being able to do Node crypto. So if you look at this example, this is a HTML hashing function. And you can see here by using this web crypto API, in this case, the subtle library here, we can generate a hashing function. Oops, I keep on doing that. There we go. All right. So this is kind of neat. We were talking a little about C and C++ earlier. So a lot of people like to write, native modules for Node, and these are some of the new methods that were added into the C and C++ API for being able to write or interact with Node. And these mainly are around, object freeze and seal and that sort of thing. You have some type tags in there as well. And here's the AbortController. So this is actually was part of Node 15. And this has a once true option you can use inside the event listeners. So here's an example here of us instantiating a AbortController. And then if you take the AbortController, you can hook into this signal property and add an event listener. And so what I'll do is I'll listen for any time somebody wants to abort, and then you can call abort on that controller, and that will that essentially will let you cancel the promise. And they've also added A to B and B to A functions, and that was mainly done to support compatibility with JavaScript from the browser. This is used for converting base64 data into something that Node can understand and vice versa. Don't use these functions. They were added mainly as a compatibility feature. There's a better way of doing this. And so I'm going to show the better way of being able to do this. So this is an example here of a string buffer where we're actually going out and creating a buffer from that string. And then what we're actually doing is we're coming in here and we're creating a new buffer based off of a base64. And then we'll take that and convert it into a base64 string. And then from that, we can convert that back into a decoded string. So, this is very common. This is the way, kind of the standard way that you use buffers and stuff like that inside of Node. So this is a much preferable way of being able to convert back and forth between base64 inside of Node versus using the B2A and the A to B functions. So some of the other features, npm8 is part of version 16. As I mentioned before, version 3 of the source maps. The process that binding function has been deprecated. And that brings us to Corepack. So if you look at the Corepack GitHub page or repo, one of the things they'll say is a zero runtime dependency node script, which means absolutely nothing. It means absolutely nothing to anybody that's reading that. What does that mean? Basically, what Corepack allows us to do is allows us to add third-party package managers without having to have them pre-installed. And the thing that's nice about this, typically when you're using Yarn or PNPM, you have to install those tools globally on the system where you're using them. Using Corepack, you don't have to do that. So that's a pretty nice feature. So to enable Corepack, essentially there is a Corepack keyword that you can use. And when you're using that Corepack keyword, you can just say enable, and that will enable Corepack. And so right now, this is considered to be an experimental feature. And so it's one of those things where they just added it literally a couple of months ago. But this is going to be the way in the future that I think everybody does their package management, especially if they're using third-party package managers. So if you want to enable a specific package manager, you can just say that you want to enable PNPM or enable Yarn. And you can also disable. I have that misspelled here for some reason, but I will fix that before I post the slides. So to activate Corepack, you can do that very easily by using the prepare command, and you can prepare a specific version of a package manager, but you can also do all of them at the same time. So if you want to support all of them, you can also prepare all of them as well. So as far as using the package managers, so typically if you're using Yarn or PNPM, you would have it installed globally, and you would type in Yarn and then whatever feature you want to use with that package manager. But now to use those, you actually use Corepack at the beginning. So if you're going to use Yarn, instead of calling Yarn directly, you would say Corepack Yarn in this case, I'm adding Axios for basically for doing my HTTP requests. And so this is how you would add that. So normally you would add that if you're using npm, you just say npm install or npm I Axios, but this is how we can use it with Corepack. And one of the things they also have done is they've added a key that you can use inside of your package.json file where you can specify which package manager you want to use by default. So in this case, I have it set to Yarn. But they have added a key to package.json for doing that. Archiving distribution. So if you're going to, you're planning on distributing this, one of the things you can do is you can use the prepare command to get it set up. And in this example right here, I'm telling you I want Corepack to prepare Yarn at version 1.22.11 -- activate and -o. And when you use the -o, that essentially means output. What that will do is it will take whatever package manager you're using, and it's going to create a corepack.tgz file inside of your project folder. And then let's say you're going to deploy your application and you want to start using a specific package manager, you can use the Corepack hydrate command to essentially rehydrate that into whichever system is going to be using it. So I have an example of that down here below where I'm saying Corepack hydrate -s activate, and then I'm specifying the corepack.tgz file for using the packaged package manager. See that 3 times fast. And that will that actually will allow you to start using the package manager that you had packed up using Corepack. So I have some resources listed here, but let's go ahead and do a quick demo. So let me do this. I'm going to create a new window here, and I'm going to blow this up so it's a little bit easier to read. And let me go into my documents folder, Node projects. There we go. And I'm going to create, see, I have one already called Yarn Test. Let me do this. I'm going to create a new one, new folder here called Yarn Test 2. All right. So now I've created a new folder. It's empty. There's nothing in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see which version of Node I'm running first. So I can do that by saying node-v. And I am running flat, just regular Node 16. So what I want to do is I want to upgrade that. So I have Node Version Manager installed. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say Node, let's see here, use okay, so that's a fairly recent version, so let's just double check that again. All right, so let me check, how am I doing my battery? 20%. May need to plug in here. Put some extra juice.
Over there.
I got the short cable, unfortunately. I'll worry about that in a second. So let's do this. I'm going to say, let's see if I have Yarn already installed. I don't think I have it installed. No, I do. Well, I can still do this example anyways. Let's do this. Let's say Corepack enable. All right, so it says here Corepack's enabled. So I want to try something first. So I'm going to type in Corepack, say Yarn. Let's do this. Let's do Corepack pair Yarn at 1.22.11. Activate. All right, so it says here that it's prepared. I have Yarn at version 1.22.11, and it says it's ready for immediate activation. I'm going to go ahead and try doing Corepack. I'm going to say Yarn, and I'm going to say init -y. And that should have created a package.json file. So let's just take a look at that real quick. Thank you very much. All right, so here's this file. So I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to create a new file here called index.js. So I have an actual JavaScript file in here. And let me open this up inside of Visual Studio Code. All right, so blow this up a little bit. All right, it's better. So we've got the package.json file here. So I want to go ahead and do a couple things here real quick. So one thing I want to do is I want to specify type module I want to use. In this case, I want to use module. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add scripts section. I can remember how to type scripts. That's better. All right. And I'm going to create a start script. And I just want to do node index.js. And so that should allow me to run my node index.js. So now I've done that, I'm going to come back here to Corepack. And I'm going to say Corepack. I want to say yarn add Axios. There we go. All right. So there it used yarn. It actually did use yarn. And so if I come back here to Visual Studio Code, we can see here it added that dependency in here. So now what I want to do is I want to see if I can't find a free beer API. Brewery. Let's try this and see what we found. Actually, I think I can just steal one from another file that I have. So let me do this. From here, in the previous yarn test I had. Touch.js. So I'm going to cheat here. Oops. Yes. Okay, that'll work. So this is what I want to use here. So we come into Visual Studio Code. I go to my index.js. I'm just going to do a very simple script here. I'm going to say import Axios from Axios. And we can see we have a node modules folder here, and it's got Axios installed in there. So now what I want to do is I want to get a result from making that call. So let's say const result is equal to Axios.get. And I'll call this AL API. And let's just read that out. Console.log. Say result.data. So now if I come here, I can say, let's go back out to 2. And let's say Corepack, yarn, run, start. And nothing happened. So let's try this again. So unstart I thought I did. So I'm going to be running. There's a package.json. So I have node index.js. Let's see what happens when I just try to run that. Let's try node. I have a bug in my code, so we get to do a little live debugging. Ooh. So I see the problem. This is a promise. So let's try running this again. Voila. So now this is returning back. Well, the API is free, which is an important thing. The beer's not free, but the API is. So I'll take that for what it's worth. These are some expensive beers.
Okay.
Yeah. But so that is basically how we would add this stuff using Corepack. So if we want to actually take this and package it up, the way we can do that is we can say Corepack, and I'm going to say prepare. And in this case, I'm going to say yarn at 1.22.11 dash activate or activate and -o. And there we can see that it's packaged everything up into this corepack.tgz file. So I come here and take a look at this. I can see now there's this corepack.tgz file here inside of my folder, and there's no smoke and mirrors. I'm going to open up a Finder window so we can see that. So you can see right there, here's the Corepack.tgz. And so if I take that and I expand that, we can see that it actually has a version of Yarn right there inside of Corepack. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this. Do that trash. And so one of the things I can do is, let's say I took this project I have right here and I uploaded it to GitHub or some other repository, and then I want to install this onto a like a build server or onto a test server or something like that. You can set up a command here using Corepack. You can say Corepack hydrate. In this case, I'm going to say yarn 1.2.1. But I'm going to say hydrate. See what happens. And so what it's looking for is for the file name and for the activate keyword. So I come over here and I say activate, and I'm going to say Corepack.tgz. Now this has allowed me to hydrate this onto this machine, even though it was already installed on this machine. So that is Corepack. Now let me come back here to my slides. Actually, if you're running an older version of Node, you can actually install Corepack. It's set up in its own repo and everything like that. But as of, I think it's Node 16.9, it comes pre-installed with Node. So if you're installing what will be the LTS version of Node starting next week, it's coming pre-installed. And to use it, all you have to do is say, type in Corepack space enable, and now you've turned it on. You can use it. All right.
I don't have any questions on that.
Okay. So I think it's one of those things that I think it has marginal use right now, because like I think a lot of people that are setting up like build servers and stuff like that, they'll already have Yarn or whatever tools they need pre-installed. But it's acknowledging this idea that if you are, a lot of people are using workflows where they're using, Docker containers and stuff like that, and you have to go through this process of setting everything up. Now you can actually set up a process where you can use Corepack and install it from your, essentially from your code repo, and you don't have to worry about installing Yarn. and then you can use all the tools and stuff associated with PNPM or Yarn and stuff like that without having to actually go and install those from, from a different, different package. So, some of the newer versions, some of the stuff they're doing with modules now is that you don't necessarily have to have a node_modules folder. Now you can actually package up your modules, and so that's kind of a big deal because a lot of, one of the problems. I mean, npm is like a blessing and a curse at the same time because there's like over a million modules, and some of them there's all kinds of bad stuff. There's bad stuff in some of the modules, and anybody can upload something to npm. I've uploaded stuff to npm, so you know how dangerous it could be, right? So so anyways, a lot of companies and stuff like that will have a set. They'll have a set of approved modules that you can use when you're writing your applications. And so a lot of the bigger companies and stuff like that, they're very wary. It's like people say, oh, it's all open source and stuff like that. Well, there's different, there's different open source licenses and stuff like that, and you have to be careful about what you're installing and what's in them and stuff like that. And now with security and stuff like that, a lot of companies are going through and doing like a fine grain, making sure that there's not problems. It sounds like you guys might have had some problems with some modules that might have been added in there. So I don't know if you guys remember Left Pad Apocalypse.
I probably.
Yeah. So a quick refresher, Left Pad Apocalypse was something that happened probably about 5 or 6 years ago, where there was a module. Actually, there was a module that was up on npm called Kik, K-I-K, and it was from a guy who'd written a bunch of other modules, one of them including Left Pad. And Left Pad, essentially all it did was allow you to add padding to the beginning of a string. So let's say you had a string, you need to space it out, but maybe 4 or 8 spaces. You could say Left Pad and then 4, and what it would do is it would take that string and add padding to it. That was it. That's all it did. It was like 10 lines of code, but it was used in a bunch of projects like Babel as an example. And then Babel is used by a gazillion different projects and stuff like that. So Babel is pretty important. Left Pad by itself wasn't necessarily very important, but it was used in a lot of stuff. So what wound up happening was there was a company called Kik that made a instant messaging program, and they added, or they wanted to add, a Kik module into npm. And since they had the trademark for Kik, they went to the npm organization. This is pre them being owned by GitHub and Microsoft. And npm as a company had a policy where if you had a trademark, it's very common, companies do this with like domain names as well. It's like they would allow you to resolve that, and you could eventually take ownership of that name. And what happened was this company, they went to the original owner of the Kik module on npm, and they said, hey, we actually own the trademark and stuff, and we'd like to take possession of that back from you. And the guy who had originally said the module said, I'm not interested in giving it back to you. And they kind of went back and forth a little bit. And so they finally went to npm, and they're like, hey, we need that module name. And since they had the trademark, npm gave them control of that module. And so the original creator of that module got so ticked off that they did this, that not only did he unpublish this module, he unpublished all of his modules, including Left Pad. And when he did that, that was when they said they quote unquote, broke the internet. It's like, I think people said that, when Kim Kardashian posted that picture on Instagram, it broke the internet. No, when they unpublished Left Pad, it broke the internet. So, so anyways,
when the Let's Encrypt root CS certificate expired, that broke the internet.
That breaks the internet too, yeah. So the lesson, I think the key takeaway for me was, be careful about, what packages you're including. Do you really need that package? So like a very popular package that people use from NPM, Moment.js is an example of that. But if you look at what most people need to do with dates, specifically like being able to, parse out or pull out a specific part of a date time object and stuff like that, a lot of people will just include Moment.js and use that. But probably in 80% of the cases, they don't need to use Moment.js. And if you've looked at the source code for Moment.js, it's actually quite large and stuff like that. And it's, even if it's just 80K or whatever, it's 80K, you don't have to download. Why download it?
Yeah.
So yeah, people are thinking a lot more responsibly about modules now. They're using modules, and I think Corepack is just part of that overall solution.
So you can use it in like a GitLab pipeline.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah. So I think that's the whole idea. This is really meant for people that they either have pipelines where they're setting up, automated testing, or they're doing like a build process. And a lot of those servers that are set up in those pipelines don't have direct access to the internet. So now if there's a particular package manager you want to use with your build, you can include that using Corepack. All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for attending. And we're going to be having one more meeting this year in November. It'll be the Thursday before the Thanksgiving weekend. And that will be it for the year. But I wanted to give a special thanks to Spinspire for allowing us to host meetings this year, especially since nobody else apparently is going into the office anymore. So I was extremely helpful.
We are supporting the venue and but we are also filling up the seats.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. All right. Well, I am going to stop recording here.